Welcome back to the channel. Today we have a new build, and no, it's not in the garage. There's actually a couple other builds in there, but they're not the ones we're focusing on today. No, our build for today isn't even here yet, but I figured I'd bring you guys along so that you understand what it takes for me to get these builds done right now. A lot of people always said you can only do these builds because you have a shop to work in. Well, playing field has been leveled. I don't have a shop to work in anymore, so let's see if I can still do it. And there's a lot of people out there that don't have the skill to do certain parts of the job, so you subcontract it out. It's not that I lack the skill, it's just that I lack the, well, desire to do certain parts of the job. So we're gonna subcontract out some of our work. But the rest of it, we're gonna go ahead and get it done in our weather permitting shop right here, which is also known as my driveway. So let's go down to Scott's Grand Am Emporium and pick up our parts so we can make the car drivable in order to get it here and start working on it. Well, we're at Scott's Grand Am Emporium, so I happen to have a wheel for this thing that I took off a car, I don't know, like 15, 20 years ago. And it's in decent shape because most of the ones up here are pretty corroded. And since it's going on a pretty decent car with low miles, we want one that matches the quality. So let's see if this one does it for us. Not too bad. They're usually all corroded around this edge a little bit, but it'll be all right. So take that with us. We're also going to take a spare with us so we can throw it on the car and make it drivable immediately. Also from Scott's Grand Am Emporium. It's a winter wheel. One of the cars that I bought from Massachusetts had snow tires on it. So that's what that'll be. So if you're wondering what's with the spare when I have a wheel, the car needs a wheel and a tire, and Discount Tire is going to provide the tire. I provided the wheel. The reason for that is that he had a road hazard warranty, so it only cost him 20 bucks for a new wheel and tire to be mounted, balanced, and put on the car. So I'll throw the spare on there, and whenever he's got some free time, he can run it over, have him replace that tire, and throw the spare in the back of the car, and when I get the car to work on it, I'll get my spare back. Not a big deal. I need to collect the parts anyway, so this gives him a chance to drive the car in the meantime. So let's get over there and change the tire. I guess my response time is a little slow. The owner started changing the tire before I got there. Unfortunately, he didn't have his Milwaukee tools, so he couldn't get the tire broken loose. But he did find the key for the wheel locks, which is arguably the most difficult part of this job. We'll pull the wheel lock off first, and we'll break all the rest of the lug nuts loose. And no, I didn't bring any electric tools. I want to make sure that tools that I bring are actually going to work. But I know, your Milwaukee could have done it. Throw our spare on there. Torqued on to manufacturer specs. We'll put our wheel lock back on and then go hide the key and let Discount Tire find it later. Just got back from a road trip, had to make a few stops to get all the parts we need for this build, and I have them all. So let's get them out of here and strip them down so we can go get them painted. We got our closeout panel, our headlight mounting panel, our hood, brand new front bumper, and a couple headlights. We actually got two hoods because you can never have too many of these Ram Air hoods. It was a good deal, so I took both of them. I'll use it eventually. So we'll set this one off to the side for future projects. And we're going to go ahead and use the red one. Red one was in a little better shape, so we'll use that one, get this job done quicker. Somebody's already primed the outside, but we're going to have to go back over it because I don't trust their work. There isn't much to strip down. We just have a hood latch and a rubber baby buggy bumper. Of course, there's only 2 bolts to take off, and they're going to put up a fight. They're a little rusty, and I don't want to break them off. Turn this 5-minute job into a 5-hour job. We go back and forth, tightening and loosening it till we get that out of there. I don't want to use any penetrating oil because we are going to go ahead and edge this out, and yeah, well, oil and paint don't mix. So we'll use a little bit of heat. Take our time. And with any luck, we won't break it. Toss that in the pile. I win. Then pull off the last remaining rubber baby buggy bumper. We had to pull out our grills, our ram air ducts. There's supposed to be blackout plates behind them. I guess they wanted to make them functional, so our plates are missing. They rust out anyway, so chances are they were rotted out. There's also supposed to be some glue in there. Luckily that's gone as well. So it made stripping this down a little bit easier. We'll use the originals off of our other hood. I was able to find a fender in what I believe to be is the correct color. The only problem is it's an SE fender, so we need to turn it into a GT fender, which just means it needs a hole in the back here for where our molding clips on. And because I've done so many of these Grand Ams, I made a template a long time ago and it was worth the time invested. Because now all I do is take the bottom of our old fender that was original from 20 years ago, line up the holes in the edge of the fender where the wheel liner goes, and mark our hole in the back. Then we can go ahead and drill it out. We'll start with an 1/8 inch drill bit and work our way up to whatever size it happens to be. I still don't know that. I just put in whatever drill bit fits in the hole and keep going up to that size. I have one of these for each side. Anytime I'm doing a car that I think I'm going to do more than one of that has something like this, I go ahead and make a template and stick it in a pile. We're going to line up our template, make sure we got the hole in the right spot. I'm not sure why. It's a little late. We already made the hole. Guess we just want to know if we're going to have problems later on. Everything lines up, we're good to go. I am going to send that out to be painted so that they can paint that bare metal and we don't have any rust issues. Now we need to take off our V6 emblem, make way for our ram air emblem, and we'll just pull the glue off the old-fashioned way, roll it off with our thumb. No need to get the magic eraser for that. We have all of our parts loaded up. We're going to take them up to the body shop and have everything edged out. The inside of the hood painted and the bottom of the fender. And I'm even going to give them the bumper. If they want to go ahead and paint that, they can. Then we're going to go and get the car after all these parts are back, put it all together, and then send it back up there. Now the reason I'm taking these steps to do all this is my main goal is to make sure the customer has a car to use. Doesn't have a rental car, and he does use the car. So I'm trying to keep it in his hands for as long as possible. So I'm doing all this without actually working on the car, so that by the time I get the parts back, all I do is throw them on. I'll make sure that it's scheduled for paint. The day after I pick it up from him, I'll throw it together, bring it up to them, get it painted, get it back together, and get it back to him. So he should only be out of a car for maybe 3 days at the most. Whereas if I just picked up the car, did all this work, and then brought it back to him, it might be more like a week or 2. So that's my whole goal of why I made this a little more complicated than it had to be. There was a method to my madness, I think. So this is our rebuild. It's a 2005 Pontiac Grand Am GT with the SCT appearance package. And because it's an 05 GT, it's a 2-door. That's the only way they came. And the SCT appearance package in 05 was actually a little more special than just the normal hood and spoiler. This one also had the backrest and the seats embroidered with SCT. It had a decal in the trunk that is no longer there, but it did have one, and it had special exhaust. Other than that, it was all the same. That was the last edition for the 2005s, and also they had a 30th anniversary in 2003 that had similar stuff. So it got here right up in the front. Unfortunately, it took out our very expensive and hard to find hood, so that's why we got our new one. We got to change our fender, our headlight mounting panel, bumper. But the reason we got to do it all right now is the painting gnomes have a little free time tomorrow and they want to get this painted. So we need to get all of our parts on so that they can go ahead and paint the outside. There's a little damage on that fender on the other side that we're going to take care of for the customer since we're blending the fender anyway. And hopefully with our fender the right color, we don't have to blend into the door, but we might have to do that. So if we do, then we'll strip down that door. But let's get everything apart and get our parts on and go from there. We'll start by getting the hood out of our way. I had to make an executive decision here. That right hood hinge is bent, so do I risk opening the hood all the way and busting the windshield? Or do I put the prop rod where the hood latch is and risk it falling over when I pull the bolts out of the hinge? I went with the possible broken windshield. Turns out there was enough room in there, so we're all good. And we can pull our bolts out of our hood hinge. And still haven't broken the windshield. Keep pushing our luck. Take our prop rod down. Scare ourselves with the ratchet that we just smashed. And we'll take the hood off and set it off to the side, and we'll strip it down later. Now we have to remove our headlight, which is clear packing tape. The owner wanted to be able to drive it at night, so we just taped the lens in there so the bulbs would be behind it so we'd have some kind of marker light. Hey, whatever works, right? Somebody's been here before. We're going to peel our tape off of here so we can get our closeout panel off, which is actually still underneath the bumper where it belongs. So you know nobody's been here before. Just pull out our little push pins. Put the centers up and pop them out of there. Of course, Mr. Spotty shows up for this build right after we take the hood off. Could have used a hand there, buddy. Pull our closeout panel off. After a brief scavenger hunt, I was able to find the key for the wheel lock so we can pull this wheel off. It was actually in one of those little film cases for the old cameras that actually used to use film. Haven't seen one of those in years. It looked out of place, figured I'd look in there, and that's where it was. Now we got our wheel out of the way, we can pull our wheel liner out of here. 2 pieces, pull the front down. Half of it was already off from whatever hit it. I'm going to pull the back half off. The little push pins back here that also holds our ground effects on. And a few Christmas trees. And 1 screw. And we'll peel it out of here. It tucks up underneath the fender. And 1 more Christmas tree. And that shouldn't be in there. Pull off our little insulation clip here. Ooh. Rust. Midwest weight reduction package. Now we have to pull our side skirt off of here. It's just 2-sided taped across the top here. And there's also that clip that we drilled the hole in the other fender for. Just going to slowly slide our putty knife through there and break that tape loose. Try not to jam it into the door. When we get that clip off, we're just going to slide that molding back and unclip it. Lift up our insulation here. We can get to this bolt on a bracket in the middle of the fender. You can take the bracket off the car, but there was no reason to. It wasn't bent. We'll open up the door. There's 1 bolt at the top. These rarely come out without a struggle. Even when they don't rust, they seem to get stuck in there. So we're just going to loosen it up enough to slip the fender out. There's not a hole in there, it's actually a slot, so we just need to loosen it up to slide the fender off. We don't have to take it all the way out. Unbolt the bolts from our hood hinge that also go through the fender. A couple more across the top and 1 up in the front. And our fender is off. There should be 2 more on the bottom, but, well, as part of the weight reduction package, they've left us. In the pile. And this is the part where I usually take my turbo socket and take out the round-headed bolts. But apparently, they're not there anymore. Instead, we have an entrance to Narnia. Well, there's a bolt. I don't think that's coming off. You can be pretty sure that any nuts, bolts, or 10mm sockets that I drop are going to somehow end up in there. Gone forever. Keep digging in there, we might find Jimmy Hoffa. And what used to be our rocker. It's a pretty bad one. Those holes in the bottom of the skirt, the bolts are accessible right through there. So normally, if this wasn't rotted out, you could just put a 10mm in there and loosen those bolts up. The bottom of the fender is slotted, so it slides right off. Fortunately, nothing there anymore. Well, since our fender's out of the way, we're going to go ahead and get this molding prepped so that it's ready to go back together later. We got our magic eraser. I'm just going to go nice and slow and peel off all this 2-sided tape. You don't want to go too fast because it will melt the plastic. Slowly work it across there and peel that tape off. Easier to do when the fender's out of the way. Now we can go ahead and throw our new to us fender on, complete with the bottom that we apparently don't actually need. We'll slide it behind that molding on the bottom, over the rail at the top, make sure that other bracket is underneath the frame rail.
We have our bracket inside the door. We got to get that to go in the back. The fender has to go behind that. And then the bracket that's in the middle, the fender has to go in front of that. So we're just going to make sure that everything's where it belongs. And since it is an OE fender, everything should fit. We'll have to move it around a little bit. These things are very forgiving. And our fender did come with the factory hood hinge, so we didn't have to buy that since ours was bent anyway. And we didn't have to edge it because it was the right color. We'll start all of our bolts. The bolts for the hood hinge also go through the fender, and from the factory, those hood hinges are riveted on to the fender. Of course, once somebody's been here before, they're no longer riveted, not a big deal. The bolts are going to hold them in place. Go ahead and snug everything up. There's really no adjustment up here, so everything should go right back where it belongs. Should we push our fender in, get it lined up before we tighten up the back? There is some adjustment down there. Pretty much the entire back of the fender is adjustable. Hold it where we want it with one hand, tighten it up with the other. That looks pretty good. We'll go get our hood, see how that fits. Luckily our hood came with these nice handles. Just to grab it so you can put this on with one person. For all those people that don't have any friends, like me. Still haven't broken a windshield. We're going to keep pressing our luck. You got to kind of hold it because if you just let it sit on that prop rod, it will fall over and smash the good fenders. Get our bolt started. I did run a tab through all the bolt holes, both for our latch and our hood hinges, just because they were a little rusty, and I want to make it nice and easy to put back together. Get a bolt in this hood hinge and we're out of the woods, safe from the hood falling on us. There is adjustment on here. We're just going to put it back where the original marks were and see how close that gets us. Tighten up the other side. Lining up the bolts with our old paint marks. And now the moment of truth. See how bad our gaps are going to look. It doesn't look too bad. We can close this gap up in front, this bracket down below. That's actually what it's for. We'll loosen it up and slide that fender in and tighten it back up. And that's what our gaps look like. Nice and even all the way down. And it matches this side. And our door to our fender gap is looking pretty good. Glad that bottom lines up because there's really nothing we can do down there. Now we need to put our hood latch back in. Sure, it all lines up when there's no latch in there. Let's see how bad it gets when we put our latch in. Tighten that down. And we'll set it down. And it doesn't want to latch. It's pulling the hood over. So we need to find a solution. Pull our ram air duct out of here. Just got a bunch of push pins. Pull the centers out and pop them out of there. And it just unclips from the airbox. Then we can pull this baffle out of here. There's one clip in the back of the headlight mounting panel. And the back half of it was underneath that duct we just took out.
So as you saw, our gaps were perfect, which means our hood and our fender's in the right spot. But when I put the latch in, it wants to pull the hood over a little bit, so it close up that gap and open up this one. So that's why we need to just move that hood latch over just a little bit. There's some adjustment there. That's what we're gonna do. That's why if I can, I always try to adjust it without the latch, because otherwise I would be fighting that and our alignment up here at the same time. This way I know everything was where it belonged, and now I can just move the latch over. It's only gotta go maybe 1/8 of an inch. So let's just loosen up those bolts, bump it over, and see what it looks like.
We're only gonna loosen up these bolts a little bit. We still want the latch to kind of be snug in there so that it's not all sloppy. We'll just loosen them up a half a turn, nudge it over a little bit, and then tighten everything back up. If you loosen the bolts up too much, you end up chasing that latch all around. It just gets more complicated. Of course, we dropped our socket. You know it's a 10mm. And you also know it's headed for Narnia, aka that right rocker. And it's centered on the latch, so looks like we got it right.
That's all it took, was just loosening those 3 bolts and moving it over just a tiny bit, and all of our gaps are just like it was before we had the hood latch in there. So now everything it's all latched up, everything's good. Our front end's where we want it to be, so it's ready for them to paint. We do have to pull the bumper off this side and pull the molding off and the fender liner. So let's do all that right now, and maybe I'll see if I can run a self-tapping screw or something in the bottom of that fender. There isn't much there, but I'm gonna do what I can. I tried, there's nothing solid down here where the bolt goes, so there's no way to get anything into it. This is actually one of the old bolts. I don't know where the other one went. Should be 2.
Since the internet has trust issues, I'll show you the gaps again. They still line up. And I did tighten up that other bolt that's inside the door at the top, as I just didn't want to film it. Keep it a secret. And we'll go ahead and pull our fender liner out of here, take the bolts out of the bottom of the bumper, and pull out all of our little push pins. And there's supposed to be 2 screws on this side. There's only 1. Somebody's been here before. We'll have to find that other screw at Scott's Grand Am Emporium. I think you might have a few. And there is a bolt that holds our fender liners together, but that J-nut's a little rusty, and if I try to take it out of there, the plastic's going to give up before the nut does. On this side, we have to unbolt the bumper from the fender. The other side was done at the accident scene before we got the car. We'll unclip the bumper from the fender with our bumper removal tool. We can pull our Ram Air emblem off the fender, and the putty knife slides through like butter because I did heat that up. There was some aftermarket glue in there. I was trying to save that, but it still ate the paint. Got a couple push pins in the bottom of the bumper, and our cover slides off. And we got a little dent in our absorber. It'll be fine. Pop out our little filler piece up here. It's broken. We'll have to get a new one. All it does is give the top of the bumper some shape. We'll pull our headlight out. It's just 2 pins, clips that slide down on the adjusters. Of course, our headlight mounting panel is broken right in the middle of the headlight, so that one didn't want to come out. Slide the other side out. And then slide our headlight out and unplug all the bulbs. Make sure you hold the bulb itself when you unplug it, otherwise you'll definitely break the tabs off that collar that holds the bulb into the light. Set those somewhere where hopefully they won't start a fire. And yes, I am speaking from experience. I'm going to go ahead and pull our molding off the back of our fender here. This one we have to be careful, we don't want to mess up the paint because we're going to blend this, we're not going to paint it. Get all the 2-sided tape off of there, and we'll slide that molding back and off that clip. Now we're going to go ahead and use our magic eraser to get all this glue off of our fender. Less work for the painting gnome. I'll just be able to sand it down and then paint it. GM used some cheap 2-sided tape so it gets really gummy. Usually it comes off pretty easy. But for whatever reason, this one was gummy. Just kind of roll it off with our thumb. And if it's a little thicker, we'll just hit it again with the wheel, get the rest of it off there. And whatever's left, we'll be able to take off with a little wax and grease remover. There you go. Our Grand Am fender has a little scar from being attacked by a wall.
I'm all done for right now, so I'm going to hand this off to the painting gnome so they can get it painted up, and then I can start working again. I'll throw it all back together. We're going to go ahead and paint this scrape that wasn't part of the accident, just a little bonus that got taken care of because we had to blend this fender anyway. And they must have had some Gorilla Glue in here. I tried to save it, tried to heat it up, and it still peeled the paint off when I took that molding off, so it doesn't really matter. We'll be able to just sand that down, prime it, and then paint all that. We're gonna paint the hood and the fender on the other side. We're not gonna have to get into the door, I don't think. The color matches perfectly in the garage and out here at dusk, so as long as it matches tomorrow in the sunlight, we're just gonna let it go. We're gonna save the owner some money on blending that door, and he can put it towards something else. And then we're also gonna paint the bumper, of course. So I will see you guys when it's all painted and ready to put back together. I dropped off the Grand Am with the painting gnomes, but that doesn't mean we can't keep working on it. We're gonna strip down our bumper and get all of our moldings off the front and our arrowhead. Then we can retape it so that those parts are ready to go back on when it gets here. We also have our Ram Air names that we can take the glue off of and retape these. And then we have our fender liner that's in one piece that we needed to get apart, so we'll just put a pair of vice grips on the J-nut and take it apart so we don't tear that plastic up. And then everything should be ready to go back on when the car gets here.
I had to go dig our fender out of the pile. Premature pile deployment happens to a lot of guys. So we're going to take our Ram Air emblem off of here. It is bent, but it's not broken, so we're going to heat it up, soften up that glue so we don't crack it when we're taking it off of there, and the plastic will be nice and soft and pliable, and we can gently bend it back and straighten it out. Not too far. We don't want to break it in half and have one of these new two-piece emblems. They just don't look right. I don't have any extra. They are color matched to the car, and I've only had one of these cars in this color, and it was my own that I rebuilt, so no extras. We'll pull our J-nuts off the bottom of the bumper. Easiest way is just to slide your putty knife underneath it, slip them right off. If you're looking for a challenge, you can always use a pick to pull up on that little ring and pop them off of there, but this is way easier, and I don't need a challenge. Now we're going to pull these little moldings off that go inside of our Ram Air ducts. I don't even know why they're in there. You can't really see them. They even put them on silver cars where they matched, and you couldn't even tell they were in there. They are very brittle plastic. They do break. We just got a couple Christmas tree clips in there, so the trick is to get those Christmas trees out of there without breaking the plastic. This one, we don't have to worry about it. It's already broken. So we're just going to save our little Christmas trees, because that's all we really need, and we'll head over to Scott's Grand Am Emporium, and he has extras. We'll pull out our little clips that clip into the fender at the top of the bumper, flip our bumper over, and start taking off all of our moldings. We'll start with our arrowhead. This is a customer's car. I got to put it back like I found it. This was one of my rebuilds. This wouldn't go back on. Never really liked them. I just leave the indent in there. Let you know it's a Pontiac without having this bright red flag on the front of the car. So we'll jam a screwdriver under there, hold a little tension on it, and we'll heat it up some more. We can go crazy if we melt the bumper a little bit, doesn't matter, it's going in the pile. You don't want to bend that too much and crack it. That red part cracks, so slowly work it through there, and now I'm going to use the putty knife. It's a little bit thinner, less chance of cracking. Now we need to save these little black moldings that go in our bumper. Used to be able to buy strips of these, but haven't been able to find them for a while. They discontinued it. But we'll retape those. Luckily, they weren't broken. We'll heat up this side and pry it out of there. These can crack too, so you want to keep them warm and not bend them too much. Now we're going to go ahead and take our tape off the back of our Ram Air emblems. We're just going to use our fingers. We don't want to use the magic eraser. It does peel off pretty easily. A little bit of adhesive cleaner. I'll take off the rest of it. We'll retape it. It's ready to go back on. Now we're going to give the safety experts a little bit of anxiety, and we're going to use a razor blade to cut towards our fingers and through all this two-sided tape. I did use a fresh razor blade, so if it does go through my fingers, I won't even feel it. You don't want to put too much pressure on it. You're not trying to cut into the molding, and it will cut in pretty easily. Just slide it underneath, get as much of that two-sided tape off. You're going to leave some of that glue, and then we'll go back over it with a little adhesive remover, and it'll take the rest of it off of there. We got it all off of there. We just need to get the adhesive off. And there's our adhesive remover. Best stuff ever. It is available in my Amazon store. Link is in the description. Just kind of pour it on there, let it soak for a couple seconds, and then just start peeling it off. Make sure you get it all over your toolbox. I'm just going to use my fingernail to kind of scrape it off of there. If you're independently wealthy, you can use a plastic razor blade, but I blew all my budget on that fresh razor blade, so we're just going to have to use our fingernail. Once it's all loose, you just wipe off the excess. You can see the difference when it comes off of there. It'll be shiny, black plastic instead of the dull. And that's what we're looking for. And then we'll retape it. So we're just going to do that for both of our moldings. We're going to be here a while. I'm not looking forward to that, and you don't want to see it, so we'll do something else. We'll pull our bolts out of here that used to hold our bumper onto our fender, but that was taken apart at the accident scene. Now we'll get the other half of our bumper clip out of our fender. There's a couple of tabs on the back, you just squeeze them with a pair of pliers. And we'll pull off our rubber baby buggy bumper. We got the rest of our felt liner back here. Just got a little Christmas tree in there. We'll pry it out of there. And we have our little plastic clip to the back of our GT molding. Just squeeze it together, pop it through. A lot easier to do it now than when it's on the car. Now we can throw our fender in the pile for real this time. And if you're wondering why I changed the hood, it is smashed at the end there. But the bad part is the whole inside is cracked, and that's structural, so we're not going to repair it. It also takes quite a bit of time to repair fiberglass, so it's going to be a wash if I just replace the hood. Not to mention, repairing fiberglass is not a fun job. We need to remove our block-off plates and our grills for our ram air ducts, because obviously those ram air ducts are only there for aesthetics. There is some glue on there, so we're going to heat it up with a propane torch and soften it up a little bit. There's some screws on the end that we're going to have to do a little excavating to try and find them. And they are Torx, so all that glue gets inside them. Just pick it out of there. Luckily, it usually doesn't stick to the screw, so it's kind of forgiving. If you get it too soft, the glue turns into a sticky mess. If it's too hard, it won't come out of there. There's a sweet spot. And if you get it, it kind of peels right out. Once we've uncovered our screws, we can go ahead and unscrew them. These do have a tendency every once in a while to break. Luckily, these came out. 2 down, 2 to go. We'll use our sharp razor blade from before to cut some of this excess glue off of here. We'll dull that razor blade up a little bit, throw it on the ground so we can use it later. It'll be more like I'm used to. That's about the easiest part to get to. Can't really get to the rest of it, so we'll just get what's on the top off. I'm going to go ahead and heat up our glue and pry that metal piece off of there. If you just try prying on it without heating it up, you will bend it, especially the grate that's on the inside. Hold a little tension on it and heat it up, and it just pops right out of there. Got lucky and the grate came with most of it. And it's hot. Who would have thought? You heat it up with a torch, and that happens. Maybe I should have worn some gloves. There's still a little bit of glue stuck at the bottom of our grate, and this bends real easy, so we definitely have to heat that up or pry it out of there. overheat on this corner. I went a little crazy with the glue over there. There we go. Now we can just peel off what little bit is left on there. Then we'll repeat the process for the other side.
So our Grand Am is back from paint. We got our bumper done, our whole front end done, and we even did the top of the rear bumper at the customer's request because it was a little faded out. So don't come at me in the comments, experts, telling me that I could have killed somebody by driving this thing with no bumper and no headlights. I did trailer it there, which means that's right, a mid-rebuild trailer unloading screen. Bet you didn't see that coming, neither did I. So let's get this thing in the garage, throw some parts on it, get our bumper ready to go, and throw that on.
I guess there's no reason to pull it in the garage. I'd rather work in the driveway in the sun anyway. So we're gonna pull the rest of our headlight mounting panel out of here. Unbolt our horns. And we'll unbolt our fog light. We have a little framework to do. The end of the frame rail is bent over where our headlight mounting panel bolts, so we're gonna straighten it out a little bit. And grabbing onto the spinny sharp thing is how I've ripped many holes in my finger, but I still haven't learned, so I'm going to do it again. We're going to open our hood, because I was playing with fire, hammering on that with the hood down. So in case we miss our frame rail, then we won't hit our hood. It's freshly painted. We got our frame rail straightened out. We'll bolt our fog light back up here. We'll bolt our horn back up. Now we can continue on removing the remainder of our headlight mounting panel. To remove those harness clips that go through our headlight mounting panel, I just have a socket. It's a 5.5 millimeter, I believe, and it's about the same size as the hole that those clips go through. So you just slip it over the end, it squeezes the tabs enough that it slides back through the hole, so you just pull it right through. It beats using a pair of pliers to try and squeeze it together. You pretty much just slip it over and it pops right out. We got one more that was underneath. Unwrap our wiring harness and toss that you know where. Now we have our new used one. New to the car, I guess. Complete with fresh dirt. And you know, I ain't gonna clean it. We'll clip our harness in there. And we'll set it up there. And we'll start all of our bolts. The ones across the top are shouldered. We gotta make sure we line those up. And we'll tighten up the ones in our frame rail. At the other side. And there's two last clips for our harness. Those use Christmas tree style tabs instead of the other ones, so that's why we didn't use our socket to remove those. We put our little baffle in here for our ram air. Put that back into our new headlight mounting panel. Slip our duct in here. And put our little push pins in. So there's holes in the bumper. The air goes through there, up that duct and into that tube and into the air box. That's technically the ram air. It is somewhat functional, unlike the ducts and the hood. We got our new styrofoam bumper support, so we'll put that into the top of our bumper reinforcement. And now we need to put our headlight in. We got a bulb that's not working. Working now. Make sure our turn signal works. Okay, everything's working. We'll put it back together. We'll check the headlight when we plug it in. Yep, that's working. At least the low beam is. When these things were originally built, the headlights went in before the bumper, but you can put the bumper on before the headlight. But it's a lot easier to get this headlight in there, especially that lower tab right now that I'm trying to get lined up. If you've ever seen one of the Grand Ams with the headlights pointing at squirrels in the trees, and it's because somebody took the headlight out, and when they clipped this clip right here back in, they didn't have that bottom adjuster tab all the way in, and it's pushed out too far, aiming the headlight straight up in the air. So you want to make sure you get it all the way in there. Unless you happen to be into squirrel hunting and you want a spotlight. And then feel free to put it in wrong. We clipped our J-nuts into the bottom of the fender. Got a rubber baby buggy bumper in here. And now we can go ahead and throw the clips in our bumper that'll go into our fender clip. There's a tab that sticks through, folds over, clips together. Or if you want to be that somebody that's been there before, just feel free to put a nut and bolt through there. I have seen that as well. Now I'll throw our duct opening trim in here for our ram air. This is where the air goes into that baffle that goes into our air duct for our ram air. So if you have a Grand Am GT, you have ram air. If you have that fancy hood, you have a fancy hood and the same ram air. We'll go ahead and clip our J-nuts on the bottom of our bumper. The painter left me a little extra paint on the bottom of the bumper in case I needed it for something. I guess if they're gonna put a run anywhere, that's the perfect spot because the first parking bumper is gonna take that out for us. Now we're ready to set our bumper up here. Slide it over the top of our headlight mounting panel. And there's another duct that's underneath. The bumper has to go over that, or actually under it. So we need to tuck it up there and slide the bumper back. And we'll clip those little plastic clips into our fender. That'll hold it in place so we can put our bolts in. And we'll tighten up our bolts. We're going to move that bumper around where we want it. There is some adjustment on those bolts, so we want to make sure we have some nice gaps in there. We don't want to be accused of being that somebody that's been here before. Now we're going to put our sound insulator in here so we can't hear any of the road noise between our fender and our door. Instead, we're going to hear it through that big hole in the rocker that's like a microphone. Slip our wheel liner in here, at least the back half of it. Tuck it up over that fender lip. And it goes behind that molding. Pull the molding back a little bit. Get our screw lined up. Tighten that up. And we'll put our push pins in there. And we can head up and slip our front liner in there. Trust me, I'm putting that liner in there, even though you can't see anything. When I set up the camera, you could see it. But once I got up there, it decided to change the adjustments. I guess that's just what you have to deal with when I'm both the film crew and the supporting role. We all know Mr. Spotty is the star. Now we can bolt our liner up to our bumper. We'll just start the bolts, get them all in there, and then we'll tighten them all up. That way, we make sure they're all lined up. Pick up our tools. We can put our push pins in the bottom of our bumper. It just holds it to our bumper absorber. Also holds the baffle in there. I rarely find those in there after somebody's changed a bumper. They always seem to be forgotten, and it doesn't seem to matter. I'm going to go ahead and throw our wheel liner in here, and you can actually see what I'm doing. I switched to the GoPro. Seems to be a little bit better for outdoors. Let me know what you think. We'll throw our fender liner up in the front here, and you get to see what you missed on the other side. It tucks up underneath the rear liner. Put our bolts into that other liner. We had to go find one at Scott's Grand Am Emporium because we were missing that one. We can put our push pins into our bumper. We'll bolt our two liners together. One more push pin up here. And then we start bolting in the front. Feeling pretty confident, so we're just going to tighten them all the way up. Hope for the best. And it worked out. Now you got to give your work a little pat. That's the equivalent of flicking the tie-down straps. That's not going anywhere.
Driving it around a little bit, the steering wheel is off, and at some point during this accident, it did hop a curb. That's what damaged our wheel. So I'm thinking we have some bent suspension parts. So let's get underneath it, measure it out, and see if we can figure out what's bent so we can replace it. It's got a nice fresh dent in the subframe. I don't think it's a subframe, but let's measure it and find out.
We did change the left front wheel. That's what had the big chunk out of it. But the right front wheel also had a dent in it. So both wheels hit the curb. One just hit it with the tire and bent the lip of the rim, and the other hit it more with the wheel, and that's what took out our wheel on our left front. So we need to figure out which side's bent. Our
right lower control arm turns out to be what's bent. And I kind of figured that because that wheel was a little further back and turned a little bit to the right. So it makes sense because our measurement from the front to the ball joint was a little bit longer on that side than it was on the other side. And then the measurement from the ball joint to the back was a little bit shorter because everything moved back. So we're going to go ahead and change that control arm. Actually, we're going to change both. And the reason for that is the left side, the boot where the ball joint is, was all dry rotted and cracked, and the bushing was starting to tear apart. Same thing with the right side. It actually needed a control arm before the accident. And then we're going to change the sway bar links because I guarantee I'm going to break those trying to take them out. Well, probably not now because I told you I would, but I'm counting on breaking them, so I'm just gonna go ahead and order those and we'll put them all in together, be done with the job, and rather than trying to take it apart and hoping I don't break them and then having to buy them later. So we're just gonna get all that, and as soon as those are here, we'll hop under there and get those changed.
While we're waiting for the parts store to deliver our suspension parts, we're gonna feed the sea turtles. We'll pull off the backing for the two-sided tape and toss it on the ground. That's their favorite. And yes, those are the shop sea turtles. They survived the fire. Brought them home with me. We'll line up our emblem and stick it on there. If you ever see a Grand Am in the Chicagoland area that doesn't have an emblem on the front bumper, it's probably one of my rebuilds, because I don't think I've ever put one of these back on. I really didn't like them. And that's the benefit of rebuilding your own cars. You get to make those style choices. Now we're going to put our moldings back on the front bumper. We'll start at the center. Make sure we get that molding all the way up against the edge. Stick it down there real good. And the reason for that is the sides tuck underneath the bumper. So if we start over there and we end up short, we'll have a gap. Peel it back and push it on. We don't want any bubbles in there. It will peel apart. And you end up with a lumpy molding. We don't want that. So like I said, the back tucks in there. Unfortunately, the bumper mold didn't leave us a big enough hole to get that molding to slip in there. So we're going to have to go get our X-Acto knife that we used to use when we put the models together as a kid. You know, those snap-together models. Little did I know that was training for how they were going to put cars together in the 2020s. Actually, earlier than that. But yeah, snap-together models, just in a bigger form. I'm just going to trim out the excess. Probably getting a little more detailed than I have to, but hey, why not? We can slip that molding through the hole and push it on from front to back. So there's a little bit of that molding that just sticks out underneath the bumper where you don't see it. Some engineer was thinking. He probably got fired. We're going to do the same thing on the other side. Started our front corner. And we brought our X-Acto knife with, just in case we need it. And now we can really enjoy those ram air slots in our bumpers with that little bezel we put in there that I said doesn't show up. Apparently it shows up if you happen to be 3 feet tall and you can see in there. Of course it's on jack stands, so it's a little taller than normal. I guess you'd have to be about 2 feet tall. So if you're 2 years old, you can enjoy that. Everybody else, we could just leave those out and nobody would know the difference. So we made it to the end. And this side slips right in. Looks like I brought the X-Acto knife for nothing. Push it on there, make sure it's stuck. I don't want to do this again. And if you're wondering why I didn't put this headlight in, it's because I wanted to prove you can put a headlight in before or after the bumper. That and I was missing a light bulb and it's coming with our suspension parts. We're going to put our ram air emblems on. We got our Scott measuring system. It's the 2-finger method. That was meant to build these cars. 2 of my fingers is exactly how it fits in the front and the bottom. Stick it on there. Don't push too hard. There's no bottom to that fender. And we'll throw our emblem on the other side. Feed the sea turtles. Line it up with our foolproof measuring system. And we'll double check it. And stick it on there. And the same company that makes the awesome solvent to remove the adhesive also makes an adhesion promoter to make sure it sticks. It's 3M, not a sponsor. This is also available in my Amazon store, along with these little daubers to apply it. I generally only use this on the bigger moldings where adhesion is a big deal, like body side moldings or these rocker moldings. You know, stuff that probably should be held on with something other than two-sided tape, but that's what they did, so that's what I have to put back. So you just put it on there, You let it dry for a few seconds, and then you stick your two-sided tape on it. And it adheres pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and stick our molding on. And the important part on these is to make sure you get those holes lined up in the front where our push pins go. Once those are in, you can go ahead and push your two-sided tape on and then clip that clip in the back on. Make sure it sticks. And then go ahead and put your push pins in. If you just stick it on somewhere else and those push pins aren't lined up, you got to take it back off and start over. That's why you want to line those up. If you don't believe me, try it your way. But I'm just sharing my past experience of doing it wrong. I learned my lesson. So we lined up our holes, stuck in the back of it, and then clipped in our clip. Well, our push pins slip right in there. Usually you just have to line up the top one. All the other ones kind of follow along. I did pull the hood off, and the reason for that is there's only 2 bolts, and I can pull those out of the hinges and separate the hinges, and I don't have to worry about realigning the hood later. It just comes right off. And it's a lot easier to go ahead and put these vent covers back in here and the little grates when it's sitting like this. So that's what we're going to do. It was worth the time to take it off, and I feel the need to show you I took the hood off. You can see that I did. It's here and upside down. So first we're going to put our grate in there, and we'll put the backing on. We'll put our screws in there, and now we're going to use some old windshield urethane. It's not good enough anymore to hold a windshield in. It's actually kind of starting to harden, but it will be enough to seal this up and stick this piece on. So nothing goes to waste, even stuff that materials we'd normally throw away. Smooth it out with our fingers a little bit, make it look pretty, and then we'll do the other side. And that's what it looks like when we're all done. We're ready to throw it back on the car. A lot easier to do this on the stand than when it's upside down and on the car. Then we can put our headlight in. If I was a gambling man, I'd say this headlight bulb is no good. So we'll pull the rest of it off of there and toss that in the pile. And our ring that would be broken if it wasn't smashed. That bulb looks okay. That bulb also looks bad. Toss that in the pile. And we're missing a bulb here, but we still have part of our headlight attached, so we need to pull that out of there or it's never going to seal. So the parts store brought our new bulbs. Pop those in there, and we'll go ahead and check them. Oh look, it's Christmas time. Now that we know all of our bulbs work, we'll go ahead and stick them back in our headlight. Let's take a moment to appreciate the fact that I bought a headlight from a Grand Am that has a headlight bulb lock ring that isn't broken. Must be the last one on the planet. Put our last bulb in there and clip the harness into the bottom of the headlight. Now we can slip all of our adjusters in there. Make sure we get them all lined up. And that one bottom one, we want to make sure we get that all the way in there, so we aren't searching for squirrels. Once you get them started, they're slotted, they slide right in. And lift up on the tab, push them all the way in, and push the tab down to lock them in. Give it a little wiggle, it helps to slide that down in there. And we'll put the other one in. There we go. And now we'll check it. And of course, we got a little problem here. It does not look bright enough. So the first thing we're going to do is check our fuses. Since that bulb, the filaments were bent over and touching each other, it definitely could have blown a fuse. So let's start there. It's nice and easy. GM was nice enough to put our fuse box under the hood and give us a treasure map to find our fuses. So we just got to search. That's the one we want. We're going to make sure we got power at both ends. And we do. Our fuse is good. We're going to double check it because I refuse to believe that. And we're even going to check the high beam just to make sure, since we're here. And we'll check it again because I still don't believe it. Alright, I guess we got a different problem. Now we got to pull our headlight back out of here. Pull our little retainers out. and wiggle and pull our headlight until it comes out. I don't feel like disconnecting this entire harness, so we'll just set the light upside down. See any broken wires? Nothing obvious. I don't want to disconnect this. I'm going to break that lock tab. And I did. So it looks like we're going to have a tutorial on how to fix that without any new parts. Check and make sure we got powers and grounds here. Our bulb looks okay. Our filaments aren't touching each other or broken or anything. We're just going to test our powers and grounds at the same time. We have a ground, and then we have a power for our high beam and a power for our low beam. So it looks like I found the ground on the first try. I'm going to double and triple check everything just to be sure, because we have everything we need. Technically the bulb should work. So from everything I'm seeing, we have a bad bulb.
So somehow I found the last remaining Grand Am headlight that the bulb lock tabs weren't broken off. Unfortunately, when I had to take the headlight back out, I broke them off. So I have a solution, and I will show you my solution that I use to fix these things once and for all, because even if you buy a new one from GM and they're like $25, some ridiculous price for this little piece of plastic, they last 6 months and they break too. So this solution will keep you from ever having to do it again. And when the next guy takes it apart, he's going to say, somebody's been here before, but he's not going to be complaining.
So this was an OE GM headlight. So that's why I have to fix this lock ring. The aftermarket headlights have an updated lock ring. They don't break like these. Sometimes the aftermarket does make improvements. So what we're going to do is the tabs that broke off, we're just going to drill some 1/8 inch holes, and we're going to screw some screws into these. These are screws I took out of a refrigerator when I was about 5 years old. They've been sitting on the shelf. They work perfectly for this. And luckily, I think I still have about 30 or 40 of them left. So we just basically drill out where the tabs were and put these screws in. They're the new tabs now.
So I know the internet has trust issues, and it's hard to believe that the bulb was bad and that was causing our problem. But I'm going to go ahead and show you that one of these bulbs is good and the other one is bad. For 2 reasons. One, to prove that that is in fact the problem. And 2, I forgot which one was which. So let's figure it out. I think this is the bad one. Looks like it. Definitely. Put our custom lock ring in here.
I want to plug that bulb in or it's never going to work. Now we'll put our headlight back in for the second time. Goes in a little easier the second time. 1, because I have practice, and 2, because the adjusters are already lined up. When they're in shipping, they kind of get bumped around, so you have to line them back up. Now we're going to throw our closeout panel in, and repeat after me. Closeout panel goes under the bumper cover. So we're going to slip it under the bumper cover. And that is a pet peeve of mine. But you'll find out when you try to release the safety for the hood why that's important. Put all our push pins in there, and we're all done. The sea turtles were still hungry and begging for food, so we had a little more feeding to do. You know that SCT emblem I said fell off the trunk? Well, I found it in the car, so I went and retaped it. We're going to go ahead and throw it on there. I'm just going to line it up right where the old one was. There was still some of the old glue that I couldn't get off of there. So it gave me a nice place to line it back up. And push it on, and this should be the last time it ever goes on there. And that's a 2005 SCT appearance package option. Now we're going to go ahead and do a little safety test. Make sure all our bulbs are still working. Check our horn, because we did have all that apart. We have our marker lights, our high beams, our low beams, and our fog lights. So the headlight's looking pretty good over here that we put in. Unfortunately, the original one in the car doesn't quite match. We need to do something about it. Since we can't dull the passenger one, we'll shine up the driver's one. We'll mask off our gasket around our headlight. We don't want to be cleaning compound out of there. And we also don't want to hit the fresh paint with the buffer. We got it all framed out with tape. I'll just use a little compound. We could wet sand and buff this, or just sand it. Some 1,000 and then 2,000. But we're just trying to make it match. We're not getting paid for this. We're going to make it look better. For all you experts in the comments that say I should rebuild everything on a car because I changed one part, well, here you go. We'll meet in the middle. Not as good as you would have done it, but you're not doing it, so it's as good as I would have done it. So you guys always ask me, this is just rubbing compound with a wool pad. And then once we get all that done, we get most of it out of there, we're going to go over it with a little polish and a foam pad. And these are both available in my Amazon store. And I guess we're done. Or at least my buffing pad is. With the little attachment. Guess they only last like 25 years. So we'll have to get a new one of those, but good enough. We'll go ahead and fill off all of our tape and let it fly the way it is. I guess that old saying is true. No good deed goes unpunished. Definitely if we hit it with a little sandpaper ahead of time, we could have got a lot of that haze out of there and it would have looked just like the other side. But for the most part, it looks fine. When our parts store dropped off our bulbs, they also brought our control arm and our sway bar links. So we can go ahead and get those changed. First thing we need to do is pull our ABS wire out of here. There's a few clips that hold our harness to the control arm, so we'll just pop those apart with a screwdriver. Get that harness out of there. And we'll tuck it up under the brake line out of our way. Now we can try and get our sway bar link out of here. And amazingly enough, it came out. Only because I said I'd break it. Now we can pull our cotter pin off of our ball joint. We're going to do this the cheating way. We're just going to use an open-ended wrench to see if we can get that nut off of there. If for some reason that nut doesn't come off, just pull the bolts out of the knuckle and the strut, separate the knuckle from the strut, pull out the drive axle, and you get a socket straight down on that nut and buzz it out of there. If I can avoid all that, we're going to. Shed a little light on the subject so you guys can see what I'm doing. And for whatever reason, that nut came right off of there. Spoiler alert, that ball joint is actually bent. That's why that nut came off so easily. And that was where a lot of our alignment issues were, in addition to the control arm being bent. Now we're going to attempt to unbolt the back of our control arm, but I know your Milwaukee could have done it. But so can my Scott-powered breaker bar. Just going to bust it loose. Once we get it started, my wimpy little impact here should be able to take it from there. And it did. Look at all that magic rust dust coming out of there. We'll use a pickle fork. We don't care if we're going to mess up this boot. It's already in bad shape anyway. Otherwise, I would just hit that knuckle with a hammer, but that's so much easier. We've got our bolt in the front of our control arm. There's a nut on the back side. Loosen up the nut. We'll put the wrench behind the bolt and run it out of there with the impact. We'll push it down out of the knuckle, and then we can pull it out of that front bushing. Once it's out of there, we can just rotate it back, and it will kind of pry itself out of there. The subframe acts like a fulcrum and pries it out. We can slip our new one in there. And before I slip the new one in there, to make this look much easier than it actually is, I went and stuck my porta power in there and opened that up where that rear bushing goes. Because when you put this bolt in the back, it actually squeezes it together. So if you open it up a little bit, it makes sliding it back together a little bit easier. And our bolt doesn't go straight in there because the control arm is not at 90 degrees where it belongs because it's underneath the knuckle. So since we're not going to take that knuckle out of the way, we just start our bolt in the back. We'll get our bolt in the front in, and then we'll bend our bushing to make it fit. Get our front bolt in there. Put the nut on the back side so it doesn't fall out of there. But we're not going to tighten it up just yet. We'll put the jack underneath here and load the suspension. We want to do this so that when we tighten up that front bushing, it's not twisted in there. It's where it's going to be when the car's sitting on the ground. So we'll get our control arm level, and then we'll tighten up that bushing so there's no extra stress on it. And while it's up there, it makes it a lot easier to run this rear bolt in because our bushing is now straight up and down. We'll run that in there, and we'll torque it down to manufacturer specs with our Scott powered breaker bar. This is the rear lower control arm bolt and subframe mount bolt. It does both. And while it's up here and everything's smashed together, perfect time to put our ball joint bolt in there, ball joint nut. Spins down almost all the way, and we'll finish it off with a wrench. We'll slip our cotter pin in there. Then we'll bend our cotter pin over so it doesn't fall out of there. And we can unload our suspension, and everything should be right where it belongs. Now we need to try to save these split loom clips. You got about a 50-50 chance of breaking these things. If you pull straight up on them, they'll usually come off, but a lot of times they do break because it's pretty thin. I got lucky, saved 100%. So now we can go ahead and stick those in our other one and toss this in the pile. We got lucky. If we have to change this again, guaranteed they're going to break then. They only work twice. And we've now used them twice. Run our harness through there and clip it in. Plug it into our ABS sensor.
Control arm is in here, and I can already see that our wheel is sitting a little bit straighter, so we definitely changed the right part. Our guess was right. Of course we measured, so it was an educated guess. We're going to leave the sway bar link out for now, just because it's a lot easier to put those in when both of them are out. So let's go change the control arm on the other side. I don't really think you guys need to see that. It's going to be the same as this side. If I do run into any problems, well, I'll share that with you, but pretty much going to be the same as this side.
Now I know there's a few of you that have some money riding on whether or not I break this sway bar link. So I figured I'd share that with you so you know if you have to go to work on Monday or not.
No way. 2 for 2.
And if you had bet that I would break it, well, you're going to work on Monday because this one survived as well. So we got our control arm in there. Now it's time to put our sway bar links in. Even though they didn't break coming out, they were pretty rusty. They were probably going to break pretty soon anyway, so why not go ahead and change them? Now we're assembling our sway bar link in here. And if you don't know how that goes, well, I've definitely worked on some of your work before because it's very simple. It goes bolt, washer, bushing, through the control arm, bushing, washer, spacer, washer, bushing, through the sway bar link, bushing, washer, and nut. Believe it or not, I've had people mess that up and then wonder why I get a car that's clunking in the front end because bushings are doubled up and there are none where they belong and it's metal against metal. So we just put it all together and started the nut a couple threads on the one side. We go over to the other side, assemble it all together on this side. And of course, we don't have enough threads to get our nut on there. We'll try and push it up there. Sometimes we can get enough. If not, we're going to take a pry bar. We're going to pry down on that sway bar a little bit just to kind of compress those bushings, get that nut started, a couple threads, and then we can tighten it up. And another option if you don't want to pry down on that sway bar is to just run the bolt through the other side and tighten it down. It'll bring that sway bar down a little bit, hopefully giving you enough to get that bolt started on the nut and tighten the other side up. And that's what I did, worked out. We didn't need a pry bar. Put our tires back on. Now we're going to tighten our wheels down with this broken wrench that keeps clicking. Then we're going to put our center caps back on, and this is vitally important. You need to use a torque wrench for this. Otherwise, you'll end up stripping out these plastic nuts. We'll head over to the other side and appease the torque spec experts.
I took the Grand Am for a short little drive, and our steering wheel perfectly centered again. But I'm still going to send it out for an alignment just in case, make sure everything else is where it belongs. And then we need to wash it up, so when it comes back, everything should be done. I did see a sign for a bikini car wash, so I think I'm going to go check that out.
So let me share a valuable lesson that I learned today. Always check to see who's hosting the bikini car wash before you go. Turns out it was a men's bowling league. Yeah, not what I was expecting. But the car's clean, ready to go. And before everybody tells me this wasn't really a rebuild, this car was actually totaled. And the owner bought it back from the insurance company. He did what is called retaining the salvage. So they give him a check for the total loss. They subtract what they would have gotten if they took it to the auction and pay him out the difference. So he basically has that check to do whatever he wants with the car. He chose to give it to me, and we fixed up the car. We put everything on the front end that was damaged from the accident back the way it was before. We painted that rear bumper. I put the emblem back on the trunk lid. I buffed out that headlight. We changed some suspension parts, got a wheel alignment, got some new tires for it, and all this, and he still had money left over. So he has a better car than before the accident and a couple bucks in his pocket. I think he did pretty good on this deal. And because he never gave up the title, it's still a clear title, one owner car.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh- I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh- I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate